So now we are in for a treat. Jeff Moffa, President and CEO of Auros Knowledge Systems, is here to share his latest thoughts on Knowledge Aware, the big and expanding picture. Remember, there's questions at the end. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you so much, Amy. You're a tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Amy kind of laid out what we're doing today. I do want to just put a little pitch in tomorrow. The customer presentations are going to be awesome, too. A lot of good ones. I'll be talking a little bit about what to look forward to in those presentations during my presentation now. I really enjoy doing this particular presentation every year. It's called the Big and Expanding Picture, and I'm amazed every year how much bigger or enriched the vision for Knowledge Aware is. And so I do this presentation in two bits. One is the big picture, what is Knowledge Aware, so that we can all kind of be on the same page. And the second part is that expanding picture. What's new? What are we talking about in Knowledge Aware? What's been extended in thinking about Knowledge Aware in the last 12 months? So with that said, let's get started with the big picture. So the big picture is pretty easy to describe in 3 steps. So first, let's take a look at what are people doing today to manage knowledge in engineering-intensive environments. So the past approach goes something like this. Hopefully you'll find it familiar. We all, in our work activities, experience processes, routines in our company that our companies have to do to do business. And these key processes, generally we start to break them up to try to reduce risks by putting in key decisions or milestones or gateways or whatever it is, depends on the type of processes, but certain throttle points. And as we go through these processes, we say, well, it's similar each time we do it. The best thing to do really is probably to start writing things down so that future teams can benefit from what we know about doing this particular process or this particular activity or this particular decision. So we start to write stuff down and we accumulate this document space. We got some engineering design standards over here and some lessons learned in a different format over here. And it's a virtual scenario, but then we got a design checklist that refer to these documents, and we got some standard work written over here and help videos or whatever, and different formats getting accumulated in different places, authored in different ways, and different levels of granularity and different levels of reusability. And then, well, that's good. At least we have something documented, something durable to share with future projects. But what we then do is then we ask our engineering teams or teams in general, hey, you're about to come to a decision or a throttle point or a milestone. Go search through this document space, right? And that's good. But when do you start searching? When do you stop searching? What do you do with all the things that you find that you aren't sure are relevant or how to apply? And that's really inefficient. But the biggest problem that makes the document-based approach a non-starter in the future of engineering is the fact that when you read or encounter a document, what you do, how it affects the decision of the team of the project is almost non-existent, right? It's a very weak ability to trace, I've made these design decisions, I've chosen these architectures, I've chosen to go about making a process a certain way based on what I found. The connection of what I found in the search and what I'm doing is just not there. So this approach, which we find is pretty common, we refer to this as the bookshelf approach to managing knowledge. It's better than not doing anything, but it's clearly not the best we can do. And to some extent, I like to jokingly call this the field of dreams approach. Build it and they'll come. But really what we know, or what customers tell us, is that we accumulate documentation, but we're really not sure about how well it gets used. So at this point, I would like to introduce this concept of a polling question. So can we throw up the poll and let's see if we can get our conference attendees to engage in the poll.
Yeah, and there's a slight delay too, so we'll just give it a few seconds for them to get the notification and then the results to start populating.
Thank you, Amy.
Okay. Yeah, I'm loving, we have people from India, Ireland, all over the United States. This is amazing.
Fantastic.
I know. I love that about virtual, that we can join from all different time zones all around the world. So hopefully that you got that notification, everyone, that popped up. It kind of came as a banner for the polls. And I know we're throwing up the question now. Are you, let's see, which one is up now? The bookshelf approach to managing knowledge. And we've got 4 choices. It's fine. It works for us. It has limited value. We're looking for a better way. It has limited value, and we're already moving toward knowledge aware. So I am seeing that under stage in polls. And so we are asking folks to vote on that. And I believe I have to vote on it in order to see the results. Okay, great. Do you see them, Jeff?
I don't.
Okay, the bookshelf approach. Yep. So we've got 2 votes for it's fine. It works for us. We have 20% for has limited value. We're looking for a better way. 73% say has limited value and we're already moving toward knowledge aware, and then other 3%.
Okay, I'd like to know what those others are. Maybe the people who put other can put it into the chat. Maybe volunteering that would be fantastic. Let's move ahead. Okay, so that's kind of what most enterprises are doing for knowledge management. Let's examine the new way. So as you know, we have this organization called the International Knowledge Aware Association, and this is the working definition published by the organization. Knowledge aware is a comprehensive approach to continuously collect, deliver, and actively apply trusted knowledge within the flow of work. There's a lot to unpack there, but you can pick out the key words. In the flow of work, trusted knowledge. Well, what does this mean? It's fairly straightforward to explain. And most of you that have been to the conference before have come across this metaphor that we use to explain. It does a really good job of explaining what knowledge aware is about. If you're old like me with the gray hair, you probably remember these paper maps. The way you use them is you unfurl them. And if you're in a new city, it's great to have one, better than not having one. And what's the first thing you do? Find out where you are, because all possible turns, all possible roads are there. Search again for where you may be going. Oh, it's here. And then guess your way to your destination. And as soon as you start driving, it's pretty hard to do anything, right, with that map. Of course, today, this is not what we do. Today, we rely on a system, and the system replaces that experience with something far better. I don't think anyone would have an issue with me saying that the experience with navigation based on cell phones is much better. What's happened? The map information, instead of printed into copies and distributed and getting out of date, is replaced by a system with an application on your cell phone that understands where you are and is able to cause the map to be provisioned to your cell phone, so you're seeing only the map where you are. So no searching where are you with your thumb and finger figuring it out. This is where you are. The trust and up-to-dateness of the knowledge of the map is assured. And then, of course, it's giving you just the right knowledge. Even as you start to drive and you're moving, the map is being provisioned to you. That's all well and good and a better experience. But the most important thing is that the system is understanding what you're doing. How fast are you driving? Are you taking the turns that are suggested? And it's able to take that data, and the system is able to produce insights of such extreme value, right? Traffic. How valuable is that traffic insight? Hugely valuable. So imagine if your company understood how it was consuming knowledge. How long did it take? What things were getting ignored? What things were being applied? What things were just never being used? And use that to produce a better knowledge experience, better application of knowledge, more robust and effective decision making. That's what we're talking about with knowledge aware. So just like this navigation example, in knowledge aware, there's a concept of an assessment control, which is basically the navigation app equivalent in knowledge aware that allows users to present context and have knowledge or units of knowledge provisioned to them so they can track it. So think about it this way. You're in a particular part of that project with a particular, you're coming up to a particular phase gate or review or decision. There's context associated with that decision. It's a certain kind of product for a certain kind of customer to be sold in a certain region. We can take these units of knowledge, so these little jacks looking things, the first time we're showing it to you, represent these units of know-how, engineering standards, design constraints that are provisioned based on that context. And now we can track, we can understand what happened, how it happened, and very good traceability back to why a decision is made. And of course, this is a continuous process. If things change, if assumptions change, we're able to track, provision new knowledge into the assessment control and allow the user to work directly with that trusted knowledge in real time. Okay, to make all this work, obviously there's two bits of this. I already mentioned that the assessment control, some device that understands knowledge and is able to take context in and present knowledge or units of knowledge to an end user. And of course, the other part of this is the modular format of knowledge. With paper maps, you had a big paper copy, but in navigation, the maps have been turned into units with metadata, and that's what we're suggesting with knowledge aware happens to knowledge, that they become granular, modular, actionable units of knowledge with the right metadata to be provisioned to the decisions, to the events as they're needed. And this is actually fairly straightforward to do. Okay, so let's look at a little more process-oriented. So if you're going to implement or think about knowledge aware, you first have to think about the assessment control, because the assessment control is the point in the process where knowledge is needed, and you're going to place the assessment there. So if we look back at our little project, imaginary project line, we put the assessment control at a specific point in the process, and we say, okay, this is how we're going to provision knowledge to this team, to this person, to this event. And then instead of asking people to search, what we're going to do is we're going to replace this documentation process with a community-based process, where the communities are able to create these granular, modular, actionable units of knowledge and be able to provision them to the right projects, to the right teams as they're needed. So in this particular case, this diamond point that represents a decision matches by context to certain, not these granular, modular, actionable units of knowledge we call knowledge packets. They're provisioned to the assessment control that's tracking what's happening and is able to do a lot of the work in evaluating the knowledge. And that automation part is going to be a big part of what we talk about tomorrow, but that's what's happening. And as context changes or the program proceeds, there's different levels of matching, more knowledge or new knowledge can be provisioned. And if there's a problem, it's known immediately. And because it's digital, the stakeholder who might be most interested in that team having a problem with the decision knows about it instantly, right? Because they own that knowledge and that connection is easy to make. And this becomes the reason, and the problem solved easier than waiting to a design review event and then finding out about it. The experience for the people that are running the communities is now, I don't have to go document knowledge. What I'm really doing is communicating with my teams. I'm going to create knowledge because I know it's the assessment control is at the decision. And if I create the knowledge, it will be provisioned to the assessment control and I'll know what happens once it's evaluated in that environment. It gives me, the expert of the community, to reasons to create knowledge in this format. And this is a big difference maker over a document space. And again, this process is continuous. As things change, the knowledge that's provisioned, the knowledge that's in the assessment control could constantly change. Okay, so that is the big picture. It's been relatively stable. This is what we've been talking about for a couple years now. And now I want to talk about the expanding picture. This is always a lot of fun for me to talk about the expanding picture because every year there's something new. So if we go back and look at past year's expanding message, in 2016, what was new about Knowledge Aware was this idea of a maturity model. What does it look like to go from a very document-based passive approach all the way to an organization where processes are aware of the knowledge in the organization, and there's an automatic provisioning and an evaluation of knowledge that informs decisions, right? And there's a fairly, I think that the Knowledge Aware maturity model has been very well received by those that have used it, and it describes the pathway and the attributes of organizational processes that one would go through to go from the passive bookshelf approach to the active knowledge aware approach. The model is available on the IKAA website. If you go to that website, you can download it. Okay, in 2018, we introduced the GPS navigation metaphor, which I just went through. And this was a huge breakthrough because it explains the difference of a document approach and a digital approach, a modular actionable approach that is knowledge aware. And the metaphor is very strong. The connection of how paper maps were replaced with a system of navigation is very much what knowledge aware is doing, from documented knowledge to knowledge implemented actively in the engineering process. In 2019, we introduced this concept of knowledge flows. And the knowledge flows models has been very useful because it explains how knowledge gets created, the relationship between lessons, issues, and standards, and more importantly, the relationship between engineering standards and requirements. There's a very large problem with everything being called a requirement, because in reality, customer requirements are treated should be treated much differently than enterprise knowledge. Different life cycles, different ways of applying it. There's lots of difference, and it shows up quite well in this enterprise knowledge flows model. In 2020, we started talking about the AI footprint that comes with knowledge aware, and I say it comes with it because those of you that have just even a basic knowledge of artificial intelligence knows that the primary resource required to doing good AI is data, good, clean data. And data about how your company is using knowledge isn't available when you're not controlling the quality and granularity and modularity of the knowledge itself, right? If someone reads a document, what does it mean? It's hard to say. Was it on page 5 that they needed something, or on page 2, and was it useful? Was it not useful? You don't know. But the data that can be collected through the knowledge aware process about knowledge is extensive, right? How long did it take? Was it passing? Was it failing? Was it yellow? Was it used? Was it unused? These kinds of data are very, very important in producing insights. Some of you that use Auros IQ know, that this measurement of the quality of knowledge is extremely important, extremely useful in managing large knowledge bases. Just as one example, we actually did 2 things in 2020. We also started talking about a knowledge operating system. And if you are interested in knowledge aware, one of the conclusions you will come to is you need a set of services to do these things, to do the provisioning, to doing the knowledge capture, right? And this idea of a knowledge operating system is very useful in being able to create a plan for doing knowledge aware. Last year, the trend for the year during the year was a very big expansion of enterprises engaging their supply chains and their customers in the knowledge aware process. So we were very lucky that from General Motors, Susan Bachman gave a presentation sharing how General Motors was using the partner sharing aspects and partner portal aspects, where knowledge can be exchanged across enterprise boundaries. And these are just different ways that it can happen. One's a knowledge leasing concept. One is come in and get a limited interaction with my knowledge base, and the value that can be unlocked by not just thinking about the knowledge flows model as inside your company, but one much, much larger. That presentation is online. I strongly recommend, if you have an interest in that area, that you watch that excellent presentation. Now, brings us to, well, how about 2022? What have we been talking about in the last 12 months? And again, this year, I think there are two things. The first one I've already started to talk about because it's implied by the way I went through the big picture. And the idea that is really changing the way we implement knowledge aware, has drastically changed knowledge aware idea, is that we think about assessment first. And this is kind of counterintuitive. Most companies that we get to talk to a lot of companies that are trying to get into knowledge management, even if it's not knowledge aware, and we see them trying to accumulate a knowledge base and then push the knowledge out. And I can't, there's not enough time to really go through all of the pitfalls in doing it this way, right? You accumulate what's really needed. Did you accumulate what you needed? Did you accumulate stuff that just gets in the way? And there's no incentive for the people with knowledge to put it in the big pile, right? But when you think about assessment first, and you think about the assessment control and placing the assessment control where knowledge is needed, right? In that decision, in that gateway, in that design review, in that CAD model. Now, the experts that have knowledge understand if they put the knowledge into the system, it will flow to the assessment. It gives them reason. And the knowledge to make any bit of a good decision, now there's a reason to put it in because it's going to flow to that decision. And it's visible, it's measurable. And those of you that are into lean obviously are making the connection without me stating it, but I'll state it explicitly. The pulling of knowledge through the system reduces immense waste in knowledge management. And I don't think anybody who's tried a lessons learned project in the past hasn't experienced the bloat of trying to just accumulate lessons learned and put them in a bucket and hopefully people will come. It doesn't work. But when you pull and consume, it changes the chemistry of how it's done drastically. This is a huge thing for us. Any project that we do with a potential customer now is assessment first. How we talk about, how we think about knowledge aware, how we think about our technology is all assessment first. So big deal for us, and I think it's a big deal for anybody wanting to do knowledge aware. Think about assessment first. The next trend, I'm happy to say, is going to be supported by presentations for tomorrow. So this idea is that we have models and digital representations of processes and products, right? And these models or these concepts have context to them and features that we want to apply knowledge to. So if we've got knowledge from one domain and knowledge from another domain, these units that have been granularized, actionable, and modularized, can we, in an autonomous way, bring that knowledge to the model, evaluate it, understand, track, get the data for AI about what happened, and get the application of knowledge to be autonomous. Now, I'm using the term autonomous loosely, I understand, but I want to present it as a vision that knowledge can be created and autonomously provisioned to any model, any context that needs it, and given the knowledge-aware approach, be applied in an autonomous way, or at least semi-autonomously. And this vision, I think anybody would agree, is compelling. So tomorrow, we have a presentation from Darwin Peterson, who is a very big thinker on this stuff and has done some great work in modeling knowledge to do automated process planning. And this knowledge modeling gives some autonomous lift to the process planning process. So the process instructions process, I should say. But I'll let Darwin handle it tomorrow. Also tomorrow, there's a presentation that I'm lucky enough to do jointly with General Motors called CAD just got a whole lot smarter, which also is talking about General Motors' success in creating, again, loosely using the word autonomously here, but autonomously getting knowledge to flow, in this case, to a CAD system like NX. And what are the values that we're able to do that? So this trend, I think, is supported by these two presentations, that you can't have documents in the future, because we're going to be able to autonomously deliver and evaluate knowledge to models with ever more automation and ever more accuracy and robustness. And we'll just do a lot better in our engineering projects with less failures by doing this. That's what I have for you today. We have 7 minutes left. I'd love to answer some questions if there are any.
Indeed. Great tee up. Love the overview, Jeff. And thanks for also touting the other sessions for tomorrow. Yeah, that's awesome. So, right, to do questions, we invite you to visit the chat tab, perhaps counterintuitively to the Q&A. We have disabled that to keep all of the questions in the chat under stage, which if you're here watching us, you're already in stage. So please type in your questions in the chat. I've got one for you until we kind of, again, wait for that delay and see if there are questions that come through. Jeff, I'm wondering, about how long does it take for a company to adopt knowledge aware?
Well, that is certainly a fantastic question, and is usually on the top of most people's minds when they're thinking about engaging it. And unfortunately, there's not a straightforward answer, but I can still answer it. It takes less time than it used to, because we've learned a lot. The techniques have matured. It's always a bottom-up process of starting small and growing it. So to get a small team and a single process knowledge aware, I believe it's something measured in weeks. To get an organization, it starts to depend on the size of the organization and other parameters of the organization. So in an organization the size of General Motors, for example, it would take, you start to measure it in years. But I think the most important part is that start with single workflows, bottom up, and that can be done in weeks.
Okay. And Carlo has a question. Are you planning on developing tools to assist in making this autonomous layer?
Yes, I think if you're talking about the company Auros Knowledge System, yes, I think that is something that we are doing and have done. If you come to I think we covered a little bit in the advanced sessions today, and I think we cover it quite a bit in the CAD CAD the joint session tomorrow. CAD got a whole lot smarter presentation.
Okay. Yep. And that CAD presentation is at 11:05, and Darwin's is at 9:10 tomorrow Eastern. Just so folks know, those times are in Eastern. So if you're around the world, do the math. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions for Jeff? Or anything else you would like to say in the meantime? Jeff?
Well, hopefully everybody found that useful. If you didn't, please let me know. I'd like to know, what I can do to improve in providing the big picture for knowledge aware. We've been doing it for a long time now, or for a couple of years, and we're always able to improve it. I think the idea of knowledge aware is compelling. Yeah, if you don't even agree with that, I'd like to hear from you. So yeah, reach out with anything any comments about knowledge aware to me. I'd appreciate it.
Perfect. Yes. And I was going to add that if questions come up later that folks have, they can also feel free to reach out to you directly.